They should cheer him and they should thank him for his service to the New York Knicks over the course of 7 seasons. They didn't have great success one year while Mike Woodson was the head coach for the New York Knicks. They won the Atlantic Division crown for the first time in about a decade. They had won about 54 games. They advanced to the Eastern Conference semifinals where they lost the series in 6 games to the Indiana Pacers squad that they should have beaten, to be quite honest with you, if things had flowed their way. It didn't work out that way, and from that point forward, injuries, sickness to Tyson Chandler's mom that affected him drastically, and ultimately the team in terms of their cohesiveness dropped them to 37 wins, and then Phil Jackson came in and contaminated the franchise. He did draft Kristaps Porzingis, so he deserves credit for that. But outside of that, in terms of his leadership, it was flagrantly lacking. He'd show up in a September, and then you couldn't find him in an April. He used Twitter to talk about players, particularly Carmelo Anthony, and he left Carmelo Anthony hanging night in and night out because Carmelo Anthony was the one left to be the team spokesperson, not just the star, but somebody that constantly had to be bombarded with questions night in and night out. New York Knicks fans, unlike the fans in Indianapolis who were booing Paul George because he wanted to leave, remember, in the end, with Carmelo Anthony, it was just time, and everybody knew that. Carmelo Anthony was the hard-headed individual that never wanted to leave New York. He always wanted to stay. If he had had his druthers, he would have retired as a New York Knickerbocker. He did not want to leave, and New Yorkers are going to remember that. They're going to remember the 24.7 points per game that he averaged over the course of those years in New York, but more importantly, they're going to remember he wanted to be there. He wanted to stay, and he loved representing the New York Knicks franchise. It's just that he didn't get enough help. He wasn't perfect. Please don't get me wrong. There are things that he could have done better on the basketball court, but in the end, he is who he is, and he was incredibly loyal to the franchise, did not want to leave, loved New York Knicks fans, loved the New York Knicks organization, and it was just time. And so they're going to remember that, and they're going to give him a nice ovation because they know he wanted to stay and be a part of them and represent them night in and night out. He didn't want to leave. That's the difference between him, the Paul Georges of the world, the Kevin Durant of the world. Carmelo Anthony did not want to leave.